Let me ask you something. You ever watched someone ruin the best thing that ever happened to them just because they couldn't say, "I was wrong"? They pushed you away, acted like they didn't care, wore their ego like armor, and now? Now they're sitting in silence, replaying everything they wish they'd done differently. That's not heartbreak. That's karma. And today we're going to talk about exactly what happens when ego wins and the soul loses. He thought being right made him strong, that asserting dominance in the moment somehow made him more respected, more in control. But what he didn't realize was that every time he chose his ego over vulnerability, he chipped away at the very foundation of the relationship he claimed to care about. You see, ego doesn't announce itself as the villain. It shows up disguised as strength. It tells you, don't say sorry first. Don't admit you're hurt. Don't let them see you need them. But all those moments where he could have leaned in, he pulled away. Where he could have connected, he chose control. In the beginning, maybe you excused it. You thought he just needs time to open up. You gave grace, hoping that underneath the armor there was someone capable of showing up emotionally. But as time went on, you realized it wasn't that he couldn't be vulnerable, he wouldn't. Because for him, being emotionally available meant being exposed. And in his world, that was weakness. So instead of saying, "I miss you," he stayed silent. Instead of saying, "You're right, I hurt you," he doubled down and made you the villain. His ego needed to win. Every disagreement, every conversation, every decision, he needed the upper hand. And maybe he even convinced himself that this made him the strong one in the relationship. But here's the truth. Strength isn't in how loud you argue. It's in how gently you listen. He didn't lose you because you were asking too much. He lost you because his ego made it impossible for him to meet you halfway. You weren't asking for perfection. You were asking for presence. You weren't demanding submission. You were asking for connection. And the tragedy is, he knew that. Somewhere deep down, he knew exactly what you needed. He just couldn't bring himself to give it because his ego wouldn't let him be seen as less than. But what he failed to understand is this. No one wins in a relationship where one person always needs to win. And now, he's left with the silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from peace, but the kind that echoes with all the things he should have said, all the apologies that never came, all the moments where he should have reached for your hand but chose to fold his arms instead. He used to feel powerful for holding back. Now, that power feels empty. That ego he worshipped, it cost him something real. And that is what makes karma so painful. It doesn't always punish with explosions. Sometimes it punishes with absence, with the slow, haunting realization that you were the safe space he never learned to cherish. There will come a moment, if it hasn't already, where he sits in a room, maybe scrolling through old messages, seeing your name, hesitating to reach out. And in that moment, he won't feel proud, he'll feel panic. Not because he misses the attention, not because he's lonely, but because for the first time he sees clearly his need to be right cost him someone who actually loved him. He realizes that while he was busy proving he didn't need anyone, he lost the one person who showed up even when he didn't deserve it. And that's when regret starts to drown him, quietly, consistently, completely. He thought your silence was a strategy, a waiting game. He assumed you were sitting by the phone drafting the perfect message, watching his stories, replaying the last conversation in your head, hoping he'd come back and fix it. But what he never understood is that your silence wasn't a pause, it was a choice. A decision to stop explaining yourself to someone who never truly listened. He mistook your calm for weakness, not realizing it was the loudest sign that you were done begging for crumbs of respect. At first, your silence was born from exhaustion, the kind that doesn't come from one fight, but from the 1,000 small dismissals before it. The way he rolled his eyes when you tried to open up, the sarcastic responses when you asked for something deeper, the endless deflections, the half-hearted apologies, the way every disagreement somehow ended with you questioning your own worth. Eventually, you stopped reacting, not because you didn't feel anything, but because reacting was like screaming into a void. You realized that no matter how much you expressed your pain, he was more invested in defending his ego than understanding your experience. So you chose silence, not as a tactic to manipulate, not as a power play, but as a boundary. You realized that staying silent gave you back something he had been draining from you, your peace. You stopped explaining your needs to someone who made you feel guilty for having them. You stopped reaching out to someone who only reached back when he sensed you slipping away. And while he may have convinced himself you were just being dramatic or emotional, the truth is you were healing quietly, intentionally. His mind, he was still in control. He told himself you'd be back, that you were just cooling off, maybe even talking to your friends, venting about him. And part of him liked that idea. It kept him in the center of your world, even in absence. But the day he realized you weren't talking about him anymore, the day he realized you weren't talking to him anymore, that's when it started to sink in. Your silence wasn't a chapter in the same old story. It was the closing of the book. What he didn't understand is that real strength is quiet. That walking away doesn't always come with tears or yelling or drama. Sometimes it comes with soft, steady steps toward a better life. You weren't waiting for him, you were rebuilding you. And by the time he realized it, you were no longer reachable in the way he remembered. The door was still there, but it wasn't open. And the version of you who might have waited, hoped, pleaded, that version no longer existed. That's what karma looks like when it moves slowly. It doesn't always crash down dramatically. Sometimes it just lets someone live with the echo of their own choices. He thought he had time to figure himself out, time to hurt you and come back once he was ready. But while he was busy playing games with your emotions, you were learning how to live without needing him. You created silence, and in it, you found clarity. And now he's left listening to the noise in his own mind, wondering why he let someone so rare slip away without even trying. He'll scroll through old photos, trying to feel something that used to be effortless. He'll hear your name in passing and feel a sting in his chest, not because you're gone, but because you're gone and you're fine. That's the part that will haunt him most. That you didn't chase, that you didn't break, that your silence wasn't a pause, it was the final word. And by the time he understood that, it was too late to respond. He won the argument, but what did he really gain? A few seconds of superiority? The last word in a conversation that was never supposed to be a competition? He held his ground like it was a battlefield, forgetting that the person in front of him wasn't his enemy, but someone who just wanted to be understood. He chose pride over peace. Instead of leaning into the discomfort of vulnerability, he clung to his ego like it was his identity. He had to be right, always. And in doing so, he lost the very thing that made the relationship worth fighting for, connection. In every disagreement, he made it about winning, about proving his point, about not backing down. He used silence as a weapon and words as a shield. Every conversation that could have been healing turned into a performance, a test of power. And even when he saw how much it hurt you, he couldn't stop. Not because he didn't care, but because he was more afraid of being seen as wrong than he was of losing you. In his mind, apologizing was weakness, compromising was surrender. So he stood tall, defended himself, and watched as you slowly, emotionally shut down. You didn't leave because of one fight, you left because the space between you kept growing every time he needed to be right more than he needed to make things right. You watched him choose silence when you needed reassurance. You watched him dismiss your feelings as overreactions. He never saw that you weren't trying to win anything. You were just trying to be heard. But in a relationship where one person always has to win, the other eventually stops playing. Now he's left with the hollow feeling that follows a false victory. He won the argument, but he's alone. He made his point, but there's no one left to listen. The connection he once had, the safe space you created, the love that forgave even when it hurt, that's gone. And the echo of that loss is louder than any words he could have spoken. In the quiet of his own company, the truth starts to sink in. That maybe, just maybe, winning isn't worth it when the cost is love. He'll look back and realize the moments where all he had to say was, "I hear you," or "I'm sorry you feel that way." He'll remember your eyes filled with tears and disappointment and how he still chose to stand his ground. He'll recall how you started sharing less and less until one day you stopped altogether. Because no one wants to open up just to be shut down. He made you feel like your emotions were burdened, like your perspective was an inconvenience. And now he sits in the stillness, understanding that every time he won, he was actually pushing you further away. The irony is, he always thought he was strong, that his ability to hold his ground made him powerful. But real strength isn't about overpowering someone, it's about understanding them. Real strength is saying, let's fix this instead of, I told you so. It's choosing the relationship over your ego. And that's a lesson he learned far too late. Now, the trophies of his past arguments mean nothing. No one is clapping, no one is impressed, because when you lose the person who made life better just by being in it, the scoreboard doesn't matter anymore. He won the fight, but he lost the heart. And in that quiet, undeniable truth, regret takes root. It grows in the spaces where love used to live. It shows up in the moments he wishes he could go back, not to win, but just to hold you and say, I didn't mean it. But the problem is you're not there anymore to hear it. Karma isn't always loud. It doesn't always show up in dramatic explosions or public downfalls. Sometimes karma is quiet, it's subtle. It's you smiling more, laughing easier, living lighter. It's him watching from a distance, realizing that the life he thought you couldn't live without him, you're now living better without him. That's what makes it so powerful. He expected chaos when you left. He thought you'd unravel, that you'd break down, that you'd come crawling back once the silence got too heavy. But instead, you rose. There's something deeply unsettling for someone like him, someone ruled by ego, about seeing you thrive after he walked away, or worse, after he pushed you away. He assumed he had more time. Assumed your love would wait around forever while he figured himself out. But that's the mistake ego makes. It convinces people that loyalty is infinite, that someone who loves them deeply will keep tolerating their patterns no matter how many times they hurt them. He took your kindness as weakness. He thought your patience meant permission. And now he watches you move forward without him. And for the first time, it stings in places he didn't know could hurt. Karma didn't come for him in the form of revenge. You didn't scream, you didn't slander his name. You didn't post cryptic quotes trying to make him feel something. You simply became untouchable. You went inward, healed the parts of yourself he never tried to understand, and came back stronger, wiser, and softer. But only for the people who truly deserve it. You stopped explaining your worth and started embodying it. That's karma. It's not a punishment, it's a mirror. And when he looks at you now, all he sees is what he lost. He may pretend not to care. He might act unbothered. He may even distract himself with attention from others. Quick fixes for an emptiness that never seems to go away. But deep down, he knows. He knows that the version of you who loved him the way you did doesn't exist anymore. That version gave everything, asked for very little, and stayed longer than she should have. And now she's gone. He can't get her back because you outgrew the version of yourself that needed to shrink to keep someone like him comfortable. What hurts him most is that you didn't fall apart. You flourished. That while he stayed stuck in the same habits, the same cycles, the same surface-level validation, you went deeper. You became the person he always claimed he wanted. Only now, you're not his to claim. That's what karma looks like when it's doing its job properly. It lets someone sit with the weight of what they lost without you having to lift a finger. Your joy, your growth, your peace, that's the consequence. That's the message. He underestimated you, thought he had more power than he did. And now, while you're out there building a life you're proud of, he's haunted by the realization that your absence is louder than your presence ever needed to be. He might not ever say it. He may never admit he messed up. But every time he sees you smiling without him, laughing in someone else's arms, showing up for yourself the way he never could, that's the echo of his choices. You didn't need to punish him. The universe took care of that. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. With contrast, he sees what you've become and he knows he could have been part of it if only he had chosen humility over ego, honesty over games, love over control, but he didn't. And now, all he can do is watch. Regret doesn't always arrive right away. It doesn't hit in the middle of the argument or when the door slams shut. It creeps in slowly, days, weeks, even months after you've stopped trying. At first, he might have felt relief. He might have convinced himself that the distance was freedom, that being alone meant peace. But then something shifts. Something reminds him of you. A scent, a place, a random song on the radio, and suddenly he's back in the moments he thought he could forget. That's when it hits him. You weren't just someone he dated. You were the difference between chaos and calm. You were the standard, not the mistake. When he let his ego run the show, he couldn't see that clearly. Back then, he believed the version of love you offered was too much, too intense, too real. He labeled your needs as pressure, your honesty as drama, your loyalty as clinginess. And all the while, he told himself there'd always be someone else, someone easier, someone who didn't challenge him to grow. So he pushed you away, not in one big moment, but through 1,000 small ones. Missed calls, eye rolls, silence when you were hurting, excuses when you asked for more. He thought you'd always be there, thought the love you gave was something he could come back to after he got things out of his system. But what he didn't understand is that real love doesn't wait forever. You can't treat someone like an afterthought and expect them to still be your home when you finally feel lost. Regret doesn't show up in the moment you let go. It shows up in the moment you realize they're not coming back. Now he sees you differently. He doesn't just remember the times you got upset. He remembers why. He remembers the way you fought for him, even when he didn't deserve it. He remembers how safe it felt to be seen by someone who genuinely cared. At the time, he didn't know how rare that was. He thought connection came easy. That love was something he could replicate, but now he understands. Not all love is equal, and not all hearts will keep waiting for you to wake up. That realization is its own kind of pain. It's the kind that lingers, the kind that hits at night when the noise dies down and there's no one else around to distract him. He starts scrolling through old photos, trying to relive something that can't be recreated. He plays conversations over in his mind, what he said, what he didn't say, what he should have done. And in every one of those replays, he loses you all over again. What hurts most isn't just that he lost you. It's that you're okay without him. That you're glowing in your growth. That the love you used to pour into him is now being poured into yourself, or maybe even into someone else. Someone who shows up in all the ways he never could. That's what regret feels like when karma hands it back. It's not just longing. It's the knowledge that he had the real thing in his hands, and he threw it away, chasing illusions. He doesn't miss the attention, he misses the intention, the way you loved him fully, even when it cost you your pride, the way you stayed, tried, forgave. And now, all he has are memories of a love he couldn't return because his ego told him it was safer to run. But safety doesn't bring fulfillment, control doesn't create connection. And now that you're gone, he finally sees it. Only now, you're not looking back, and that's what drowns him. Knowing the door didn't close on its own, he slammed it. He won't say it out loud, not to his friends, not even to himself. But the silence is getting to him. The same silence he once used to punish you, to create distance, to make you feel like the one always needing more. Back then, he wore his ego like armor. He acted like he didn't care, like he was unbothered, like walking away was easy. And for a while, maybe it was. Maybe in the beginning, the space between you felt like power. He told himself he was fine, that you were replaceable, that someone else would eventually come along and fill the spot you left behind. But the silence doesn't lie. And now, it's all he hears. At night, when the distractions fade and the noise dies down, regret has a way of getting louder. It creeps in through the stillness, whispering all the things he didn't say, playing back all the moments he handled with pride instead of presence. He remembers your tone, your tears, the way your voice cracked when you asked him to meet you halfway. He didn't listen then, not really. His ego told him to stay detached, to be the one who cared less, to never fold first, so he didn't. And now, there's no one left reaching out. What he doesn't tell anyone is that he checks your social media, that he pauses on your stories just a few seconds longer, that when he sees you smiling, happy, unaffected, something inside him twists, because that wasn't how this was supposed to go. He expected sadness, he expected longing, he expected you to fall apart without him, but instead, you've become more radiant, more grounded, more you. And that's what haunts him. Not just your absence, but the fact that your life didn't stop when he left. It started moving forward. He tells himself it was mutual, that it just didn't work. But deep down, he knows the truth. He pushed you away. Slowly, consistently, and with just enough indifference to make you question your worth. He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He simply withheld affection, withheld effort, withheld the kind of vulnerability that makes love feel safe. He thought doing less would keep the upper hand. But love doesn't survive in power plays. It dies there. Now, the ego that once protected him is suffocating him. It won't let him reach out. It won't let him say, I miss you. It won't even let him apologize. Because to do that would be to admit he was wrong, that he took something rare and treated it like it was ordinary. And so he stays silent, publicly strong, privately unraveling. The people around him have no idea what's really going on. He still smiles, still jokes, still posts like nothing's wrong, but behind the scenes, regret sits heavy in his chest. He's replaying every moment he could have chosen you and didn't. He didn't realize it back then, but you were his mirror. You saw through him. You challenged him. You didn't just want the surface. You wanted the soul. And that terrified him. He'd spent so long performing, hiding behind confidence, charm, and detachment that when someone finally asked for something real, he panicked. His ego told him to run, to dismiss, to downplay. And now when he thinks of you, he doesn't just miss what you had, he misses who he was when he was with you. Because in your presence, he had a chance to grow, to evolve, to be more than what he'd always been. But he didn't take it, and that opportunity is gone. So he stays quiet. Not because he doesn't feel the weight of what he lost, but because his ego still won't let him admit it out loud. And that's the cruelest part of all. His pride won the moment, but his regret owns the silence. In the end, he let his ego win. He chose pride over presence, power over partnership. And now, karma doesn't come in the form of revenge. It comes in the form of realization. Realization that love doesn't wait for people to grow up. That silence doesn't always mean you're being patient. Sometimes it means you're healing. And when you stop fighting to be seen, that's when you finally see yourself. So if you've ever been made to feel like you were too much for wanting clarity or too emotional for wanting effort, remember this: you weren't too much, he was too small. And now, while he drowns in the echo of what he lost, you rise, not to prove a point, not to make him regret it, but because you finally realized loving someone shouldn't cost you your peace.